Hi, I'm Keith Lieberthal, back with Jim Cramer on One Step Ahead. Now we're going to talk about national oil companies. Jim, they have large reserves, but they don't have a lot of know-how.
Right.
What's going to happen to them in the future as their fields stay flat and their infrastructure starts to degrade?
Let's use the Mexican example. The Mexicans, a very capitalist country, could conceivably have much larger reserves than we think, but runs the oil company to benefit everybody else and doesn't feel any real heat. Now, they've stepped up their drilling budget a little bit, but they have run this thing as a deficit for 30 years, and it's their method. I regard Mexico as being the best of the national companies, because some of these companies are running them in order to be able to be confiscatory for those who are drilling. I mean, you take a look at where the big oil is, and the only place that is really putting a lot of money toward infrastructure is Qatar. They are, if you talk to Foster Wheeler, which actually builds this stuff, they would tell you that's the only place where the contracts are really coming in. You have to start, if you're going to build up your infrastructure for 2012, you got to buy stuff now. And if you take a look at where the contracts are coming from, they're really coming from one major oil producer. Indonesia, by the way, is like Mexico. Again, they've got this decline in reserves. We think it's not true. It's just that they're not willing to contract with the Transocean Drillings and the Global Sand Phase to get to the deeper reach. Then one other thing that's kind of preposterous is our country has stopped drilling. We're just now beginning. We're so sensitive to the dollar amount of natural gas on a given month that our companies are incredibly short-sighted. And despite the idea that the president is supposed to be pro-drilling, we've actually taken a big step backward in the last 5 years in drilling in our country.
Well, let's put ourselves then in the seat of a president of one of these oil-rich nations and their oil companies. 2-3 years down the line, you're hitting that capacity crunch.
Right.
What do? Are you bringing in outside companies?
Can I be really cynical for a second?
Let's be cynical. That's
what
usually
do?
Good investing.
You retire and a new guy comes in. I mean, most of these countries are running their oil the way that we have historically run our budget. It's like it's really someone else's problem. If there were a visionary, then Nigeria would be drilling like amazing. If there were a visionary, Venezuela would be drilling. But no, what these places are running themselves as is guys who are just trying to keep their jobs. And the only way to keep their jobs is to run a Leninist philosophy. Now, later on, Lenin did the national economic policy and recognized the error of his ways of keeping in power. But they're using basically a communist method to fend off either Islamofascism or an overthrow. Well, these are not places that are sitting there thinking, how do we get more oil out of the ground?
And to your point, Hugo Chavez and Venezuela's national oil company is spending 40% more on social programs on oil and gas infrastructure investment this past year. That's telling.
He wants to stay in power. I mean, I happen to be, and I know this is very politically incorrect, I'm a huge fan of Chavez. And the reason I am is because it's a remarkable situation that he hasn't been overthrown by the oligarchs, the 0.1% of Venezuela that's in charge. They have not been able to get the military against him. They have not been able to instill a coup against him. And the reason is because he has taken the perspective, which is that we're going to run the oil as a charity for people. Unfortunately, they're a swing producer. And if Venezuela 5 years from now became wealthier, they will be the one. But Chavez has to go from being Lenin to having Lenin with the national economic policy and bringing in an arm and hammer to exploit the resources. It's a long-range plan, but I think Chavez is totally taking his plan out of a Leninist Trotskyite view. He's steeped in those. He's been very well educated into communism and has embraced the communist model.
It's very interesting. If taking it back to a political perspective, for all of our confrontation and all of our worry about security matters, there would be no more powerful deterrent to Iran, to Venezuela, than $40 a barrel oil. That's what's keeping them afloat.
Right. And I think that when I look at what the companies that are doing, I profiled Corning yesterday. I mean, Corning is trying to make diesel, obviously a better fuel, into something that's powerful. In our country, and that's a more economic independence way than any of the foolhardy ways that we're using, which are really just to win votes in Iowa. You know, before I criticize, I guess where I'm going is before I criticize the short-term nature of a Chavez or of the Mexican government or of Nigeria or Indonesia, there's no one more short-term than we are.
Well, we've looked at international, we've looked at national. Now, we're going to come back in a moment and look what might be the most interesting area of all in between, oil services and oil drilling.
This is where
we'll
the
be
one
right back with
place,
that.
oil and oil services are the one potential savior of the situation.
Stick around, we'll talk about it.